I have been working in the financial services industry for about a good 15 years now. And I'm initially from Mumbai in India, and I did my master's degree in marketing. And I joined the hospitality sector for a brief stint of 2 years. And very quickly I realized that it's not something that I intend to do in the long term. It really wasn't stimulating enough for me. So that's when I actually decided that I want to change and get out of this industry and move into an industry which I think will be more, stimulating in the longer term. Coincidentally, around the same time, I also got married and I migrated to Singapore. And that's when I made a conscious decision to actually get into banking. And I was fortunate enough, I got a good break with Citibank in 2005. And that's where I started my journey. So I was like a novice. I was very new to the industry. So I started from scratch. And my initial role was that of an associate, where I was, talking about remittance requirements for individuals as well as corporates in Singapore. And then I transitioned into an acquisition role where I was actually acquiring high net worth as well as, priority banking clients. So I got exposure to a whole new set of asset classes, which was again, like great exposure for me. It was a very steep learning curve and I thoroughly enjoyed the journey. It was stressful, yes, but I absolutely enjoyed the learning experience. And then I transitioned into private banking. I started my first role in private banking in 2011. There was a bank called Coutts, and it's very renowned for its capabilities in wealth management. And I joined them in 2011. Again, the platform for private banks is very sophisticated. Then in 2016, we had another interesting move. We were acquired by a Swiss boutique private bank called UBP. They excel at wealth management, both for private as well as individual clients. And that's when I moved to UBP. I still continue to work with them and I advise clients along with a team of experts on preserving and growing their relationships. I'm primarily looking at clients across Asia. So all in all, if you ask me in a nutshell, I think it's been a wonderful journey. It's been ups and downs, like a roller coaster. There have been some great years and there have been some very tough years. But if you ask me, truth being told, I don't think I would trade it for anything else. Okay, so when it comes to private banking, I'd like to touch upon maybe 3 trends to give you some perspective. So I think the first one, of course, is exactly what you mentioned, right? It's to do with technology. And, I think today digitization and technology is a key focus for banks to remain competitive. So if you ask me, I think, technology has been a focus for private banks for quite some time now. However, I think with this pandemic, the trend has just accelerated, right? And I think it's just more compelling in terms of timing right now. So I think banks have been actually on this digital journey. They have been looking at developing smart and effective solutions as well as client interface, right? To ensure that they are in the game and, they are ahead of competitors. The second trend that I'd like to touch upon is that, ESG is actually driving a whole new generation of investors. ESG stands for environmental, societal, and governance factors, right? Now, what we are currently experiencing in the wealth management industry, there's actually a massive multi-trillion-dollar wealth transfer that is ongoing. And the millennial generation is actually a big beneficiary of this trend. If you look at the millennials, they like to actually invest in companies that resonate with their core values. And what I mean by ESG, so let's look at what is their thought process. They want to invest in companies that cause less pollution. They want to invest in companies that manage waste in a responsible manner and, use energy efficiently. So I think this is something that is very critical. And I think ESG, if you ask me, I believe that millennials will actually force an ESG revolution. And wealth managers have to be prepared for this changing investor attitude. I think the third trend that I'd like to touch upon is, the partnerships that we are seeing between banks and big technology firms. As you can well imagine, encroachment by some of the large technology companies, be it Facebook, Microsoft, Google, in a way poses a growing risk when it comes to the traditional banking model. Now, instead of taking this as a threat, what we are seeing is that banks are actually embracing collaborations and partnerships with technology companies. So just to give you an example, which probably you may have heard of, the launch of Apple Card, which was done, was actually a collaboration between Goldman Sachs, which is on the financial services side, and Apple, as we all know, the technology company. Much in the same way, Citibank and Google are now exploring, coming up with a checking account. So I think this marks a significant shift in the private banking industry. And I think when banks are doing these partnerships, the key thing they need to be mindful of is how they position themselves in this deal. I think everybody has a different journey, and I think you need to be true to yourself. So for me, I think, again, if I like to touch upon maybe 2 or 3 key elements here, I think the first one, I think it's important to remember that emotional intelligence is vital, right? We often hear about IQ, right? So I think IQ gets you through the door, right? It gets you hired, but it's your emotional intelligence and your EQ that will get you promoted. I think the second element that I'd like to touch upon is the fact that, it's okay to fail, right? I mean, yes, we all fall down, we all make mistakes, but it's how you sort of get up and how you make the most out of it. If you read, there have been phenomenal leaders in the world, people I admire, Oprah Winfrey, Jack Ma, Steve Jobs, they have done some fantastic, they've had so many obstacles and adversities that they have faced, and they've emerged even stronger. So I think it's okay to fail. Just remember, it's an opportunity to learn and grow and just keep moving ahead. And the third thing, which I feel is close to my heart, is that you need to think big. And what I mean by that is, sometimes unknowingly, we have these, very small thoughts and puny thinking, which sort of hold us back. But what if you're destined to do great? What if you're destined to be a great leader? What if you're destined to inspire and impact people's lives, right? So if you think small, you'll act small and you'll never reach your true potential. So I think you need to make it your mantra to just think big. I think the first thing which I feel is something that you alluded earlier in the conversation, which is to actually be a lifelong student, right? I think learning is something which is essential to all of us. Right? Just like you need food to nourish your body, we need continuous learning to nourish our minds. So I think we live in a very fortunate era today, which we don't realize, right? Today, at the click of a button, you can just access whatever you want, be it books, be it audiobooks, podcasts. You've got the best universities in the world. Courses are just available online. So I think you just need to make the most of it. Like for me personally, I'll tell you, I love to read, I love to listen to audiobooks. So whenever I'm going to office and coming back, that 30, 40 minutes, I tend to try and listen to an audiobook and on topics that I like. But at the end of the day, whatever works for you, right? The second thing that I wanted to talk about was building a good support system. Support is particularly important when it comes to women, right? In the early years, I think, I believe that, there may be times you won't be taken seriously. People may ask you, do you think you're capable of doing this? Are you able to manage this along with, your family and your professional life? I don't think men will ever get asked these kind of questions, right? So I think it's important to build a good support system when it comes to friends, when it comes to, your peer group, mentors. I think, there will be bad days that you will face, and you'll need people who have your back and people that you can talk to when you have these tough times. The third key learning for me, if you ask me, is I think it's important to find your voice. When we are working, we have so many ideas, in our minds that, yes, let's improve things this way. I think we can do it better in that manner. And what happens is very often when you are asked to express your opinion about how do you improve things, when there's a meeting going on, you'll probably say, you know, you may contribute, may not contribute. Sometimes it's all in your head, but you just don't share it. I think we have these internal demons. I mean, I faced it so often as well, right? That you feel, okay, maybe your ideas are not that good, or maybe you're going to be rejected, or, maybe you'll be ridiculed. And, you just prefer to stay quiet and just go with the flow, right? There's an amazing book by Susan Cain, which is called Quiet, The Power of Introverts in a World That Never Stops Talking. And there they mentioned that, in a meeting, typically you've got just 3 people who do 70% of the talking. And I think, it's important that you should find your voice, right? Because that's what represents the value that you bring to an organization. So sometimes, even if it means you're going to rock the boat, just don't be afraid to speak.